Hi everyone, and welcome to this AlphaCore webinar. My name is Daisy Clay and I'm the Head of Content Development for Smartbox. And just a minute or two, I'm going to be introducing you to Amy Roman, who is the speech and language pathologist who created AlphaCore for us. So just a quick introduction to AlphaCore from me first, which is to say that AlphaCore is one of our text AAC grid sets, and it's available for grid 3 if you're using a Windows device, and if you're using an iPad, it's available on Grid for iPad too. So you can get free trials of Grid 3 and Grid for iPad, and you can download the AlphaCore grid set into your Grid Explorer. So if you're using Grid 3, then you just need to go to the menu bar at the top of the screen and select Add Grid Sets, and then Text Communication, and you'll see the AlphaCore grid set appear in the list. And if you're using Grid for iPad, I'll just show you. You just tap in the corner on the little 3 dots to bring up your menu, and then choose Add Grid Sets, which will just load up the different options. Choose Text Communication, and then you'll see the AlphaCore grid set at the bottom there, and you can choose to add it in to try it out. So feel free to do that if you're wanting to have a look at the grid set as we're going along. You can try that out, as I say, for free. And now I'm going to pass over to Amy Roman, who, as I say, she's the speech and language pathologist who has designed AlphaCore for Grid. So she's going to give us an overview of the whole grid set and talk us through the different features. So we will pass over to Amy now. We'll have live chat going on, so if you've got any questions, just pop your question in the live chat, and then there'll be time at the end of the webinar in about an hour for Amy to go through those questions and answer them for you. Okay, so over to you, Amy.
Hi, and thanks for the introduction, Daisy. Today we are going to be exploring AlphaCore, a page set that I developed for grid communication software, specifically for patients with ALS and other literate individuals who, for example, people like who might have cerebral palsy, some people with a brainstem stroke, multiple systems atrophy. I'm going to be showing you some of the features today that I added to AlphaCore to make communication efficient for this population, and I also want to share with you some of my favorite communication strategies. So I think, so this doesn't get in the way, minimize that. All right. So I have been working at the Forbes Norris ALS Research and Treatment Center in San Francisco since the year 2000, and this is a shot of my wonderful multidisciplinary team. My job at the clinic as the Augmentative Alternative Communication Specialist, or AAC specialist, involves working with clients and their families and support teams to develop communication solutions. You can see a few shots of me working here with families over the decades. Today I'm going to share with you some of the insights that I've gained from my clients and their caregivers that shaped the features of AlphaCore that I'll be showing you. So my clients use many different ways of interacting with their speech generating device, from typing on a standard keyboard to mouse and mouse alternatives to head or eye tracking. And these different methods are collectively called access methods. And many of my clients start with one access method, but end up moving to one or another access method as their physical abilities change. I designed AlphaCore specifically to enable my clients to make these transitions in a seamless and timely manner, all the while maintaining the use of familiar page sets and any personalizations they may have already created. So let's take a look at the agenda for today quickly. We're going to be looking at the keyboards of AlphaCore. There are 7 keyboards. We're going to look at the topic page and topic phrase pages, topic pages. We're going to look at how to add and remove as well as edit messages that are on the communication page sets to quickly customize them for yourself. I also want to look at message banking, talk a little bit about message banking and how it's incorporated in AlphaCore. I want to definitely show you some of the most helpful communication pages in AlphaCore. And then finally, we're going to look at a picture is worth 1,000 words, and I'll show you that when we get to it. So when you first open AlphaCore, this is the welcome page. And what it asks you to do is select a keyboard. And so you've got to decide what keyboards you might want to consider. Each of the keyboards of AlphaCore is specifically designed to facilitate the use of different access methods, as well as a person's visual abilities and their personal preferences. So you can try out different keyboards and change your keyboard at any time. So there are 2 pages of keyboards. Like I said, I think there's 7 different keyboards. And under each, you see with AlphaCore, the keyboard selection page, you see a little picture of the keyboard, its name, and also a little blurb under it to help you decide if this is a keyboard that you might want to consider. And the blurbs also give kind of my suggestions for the populations I use these keyboards with. So let's take a look first at the QWERTY standard keyboard. So QWERTY is just a name for a keyboard that is in the standard keyboard order. You can see QWERTY is actually spelled here, if a lot of people have never noticed that. So this is a basic keyboard. One of the things about the standard keyboard is that it is designed so that it can be used with a key guard. And a key guard is a little piece of plastic, typically, that fits over a computer screen and enables a person who is not super accurate to target buttons on the screen a little bit more easily. If their hand slides, their finger goes out of the little notch for that key, and they don't end up hitting a lot of keys. Now, this is actually, key guards are not something that I use a lot with people with ALS because they tend to be very accurate. I also don't love a touch screen for people with ALS because there's some neck weakness, and I'd rather not have them bending their heads down to look at a touch screen. But occasionally it is appropriate, and we use it, and some people really love it. I do use the key guard with a patient right now. For example, I'm working with someone with cerebral palsy, and that person isn't super accurate, but is able to use this page set because of the key guard. So let me take you on a little tour of the icons and functions on the keyboards in AlphaCore. And these stay consistent no matter which keyboard you're on or switch to. So here, this icon is for your settings, a button to delete word, a little faster, of course, than backspacing. Here's your backspace. This button always takes you back to the last page you were on. Topics pages, these are your phrase pages and some of the other functions, like your ability to access the web, and email, things like that. So very important, and this is on every page, every keyboard in AlphaCore. This button up here is a speak button, and that is useful if, well, we'll get into that in a minute, but if anything's written in your message window, and this is your message window right on the top here, anything you type in or messages you select go into your message window, and then you can tap on the speak button to speak that message. These Z's here, this is a rest button, and the rest button is used really only by people who are using a method called dwell selection. And dwell selection means that if you are unable to hit the clicker on your mouse, or you're using eye tracking, it's one of the methods available that lets you just hold your cursor over an icon our key for a certain amount of time, and it'll be selected. Now, of course, this is something that you do want to pause occasionally because you don't want to have to select everything, especially if you're eye gazing. You end up wanting to look at your page without selecting anything, so you can quickly select this icon, and it'll pause your page, and you can look at everything without making any selections. And when you're ready, you go back and toggle it back on. It turns red when it's paused. Let's see if I can do that. There we go. Over here, we've got the clear button, and let's look at these. These are word prediction. Word prediction I find really, really useful. I use it, and my patients really like it. So it's also got next word prediction. So this system will try to predict what the next word you're using based on the last word. So that's fantastic. And up here is chat history. And so this shows you the last couple things that you've talked about, but also you can type in a word, and we're going to look at this later. There's kind of two different ways to use chat history. Actually, let's just go over it now. So one way is if you've been speaking and you know, someone new walks in and you've just explained to someone, you know, something that just happened, and you don't want to have to type it all out again. You can use chat history that way. So you might find it up here, and you can go to more. But let's say it was something you said quite a few sentences ago. Then we're going to go to the topics page, and there's a whole page full of chat history. So you might be able to say, let's see.
I got this new power wheelchair yesterday, and it is so much more comfortable. I can't believe it. It only took 5 months to get it. And yes, I am being sarcastic.
So you wouldn't want to have to type all that over again. So here you've got it in your history. And again, there's a more button, so you can go way back. Let's go back to the keyboard. The next button that I want to explain is this expander button. And basically with people with ALS and other cognitively intact individuals, there's so many things that they want to be able to do. And I wanted to give all those functions, but I didn't want to clog the page up or make buttons smaller so I could fit more buttons in. So I used an expander button to give people more functionality. So let's take a look. For example, there's an edit button here. This gives you ways to kind of move around in your document, highlight, do all kinds of things. So that's something worth exploring. The share button is a way to take anything from your message window and maybe save it as a document. Let's just click on it really quickly, or send it as an email, copy it to a clipboard so you can take it somewhere else with you. Let's go back. Let's see, the next one is recordings. So we'll talk more, as you saw on the agenda, we're going to talk a little bit more about message banking and doing recordings on the fly a little later. We'll look at that. Sounds, we also are going to talk about more. Speak as you type is a toggle that allows you to choose if you want to be speaking every message as you produce it, every word of the message, or if you want to wait till you're finished with your whole message and say it all at once. So that's something that my clients have always wanted to be able to do on the fly, because on some pages they want to do it one way, and let's say they like the instantaneous, you know, having messages speak immediately typically, but they're in a support group and they're constructing their message to say later. They might not want it speaking while someone else is. They want to construct their message silently so they can, and then later they would have that on. So later they could hit the speak button. They would be required to hit the speak button to speak that message. Otherwise it would be silent. And this toggles off and on. Let's go back. Oh, this is a fantastic button. That is just an undo button. We're all familiar with that on a computer. You get to undo any mistakes. Let's say you've been talking about something and you say it to people at a dinner table, and then you push clear and you erase it, and then people say, "What did you say?" And you've just erased it. So in that case, you might want to undo that and just bring it back to your window and say it again. Okay, so this is the standard keyboard. Let's look at a couple other keyboards that are available. So I just go into settings and into change keyboard again. I'm going to look at the QWERTY large keyboard now. So this is very similar to the last keyboard we were in, but it has bigger buttons, and every little bit counts for some people if they're having any trouble targeting. And this is a page set that a lot of my eye trackers use, especially in the beginning when they're starting eye tracking. It's got nice big buttons. They're familiar with the layout. It's QWERTY. The way I managed to make the buttons bigger is by combining the word prediction row and chat history together. So you do have to select a button to get to your chat history if you're going to use it. Oh, and I think I didn't finish talking to you about chat history. Another way I like to use chat history is as kind of a phrase prediction. So check this out. So if I want to ask to have my legs repositioned, and I don't want to navigate to my page that is positioning and comfort, I just want to, I'm on my keyboard and I want to stay on my keyboard. I can type the word leg, a key word from my phrase, into my message window, and then go into my chat history. And lo and behold, if I've ever spoken some messages about leg, my legs, they'll be there. So now I can say, so it's there. So that's a really nice strategy to teach people too. You know, you can type in the word coffee, you can, various words. If you type in a keyword and bring up chat history, you'll often get the sentence that you want and don't have to navigate. So as little navigation as we can arrange is wonderful, because that just takes time. Now let's take a look at another keyboard. This is a core vocabulary word keyboard. And as you can see, the blurb says, it speeds up communication by offering frequently used words. These are basically the way this keyboard's laid out. It has the most commonly used words in spoken English all on one page, and these words account for about 75% of everything we say. So you don't have to type them out. You just, if you've learned the keyboard, and it does take a little practice. Unlike some of the other boards here, this one you do have to practice to learn to use rapidly, but it can really speed you up. And I've had some people who just adore using this keyboard. It's good for mouse users. I've got someone who's using an iPad, and they're ambulatory, they walk, so they hold it with one hand, and they love it with the touch screen just to tap out the words really quickly that they want to say. The other types of users that I found do well with this are some of my head trackers who use very small movements. We set the mouse speed to very high, and they are very accurate. So again, a lot of people with ALS tend to be very accurate. We just want to minimize the amount of work they do, the effort, the range of motion. So if you speed the mouse up, a lot of times they don't have to work as hard to get it to the different corners. So that's very helpful. Let's take a look at this keyboard. Clear that. And another nice thing about this keyboard is that there's no expander on here because everything is immediately available. The share button is here. We've got the undo. Everything is speak as you type, which on this page is really important. This is a page where a lot of times people like to turn that off so they can construct their whole message. And actually, I'll give you an example of why you might want to turn that off. So let's do it. I'm going to turn this off, and then I'm going to construct a message. Now, you probably caught that. To get to the word don't, there was a drop down from do, And if I had not had this turned off, it would have said do and then change to don't, and that might have confused people. So instead, we're just going to play the message at the end after we're done. Okay, so don't you, let's see, want to go at, and if you, for example, I just type go and I do get a drop down, but if go is the word I want, which usually it is the leader word, I don't need to tap it again. It'll self-close when I hit the next key at. Okay, now I'm going to do something unique to the core vocabulary page, and that is I'm going to switch to a scheduling page. What I've learned over the years is my clients spend so much time scheduling with people, scheduling with caregivers, scheduling rides, scheduling doctor's appointments. So having a scheduling page is really important. So let's just go to that. Don't you want to go at, let's just say, 2:30, and then we'll go on, let's see, on Friday. Okay, all right, and then we can speak the whole message.
Don't you want to go at 2:30 on Friday?
Great. Okay, let's see, I think that was the main stuff I wanted to show you on this page. But again, the words are in alphabetical order. The color coding is simply to kind of help your eye get to the area faster. People get used to this board and they just know when they want to say a T word, they kind of go for the yellow, you know. Word prediction and phrase prediction are on this page. Again, just to speed things up as much as possible. Okay, let's check out some more keyboards. I'm going to change the keyboard again. This time we're going to the second page, which has keyboards that are a little more stylized. Okay. Let's first look at the AEIOU large cell keyboard. Now this one I often recommend for people who need really big buttons. A QWERTY layout is great, but you can't put as many buttons across, excuse me, there are too many buttons to put across to have nice big buttons. If you do an AEIOU layout, you can have bigger buttons on the screen. So that's nice. So it's great for people maybe with some visual issues. So you've got the bigger buttons, people who need a bigger target, but also I work with a lot of folks who are using a low-tech communication method called partner-assisted scanning. And partner-assisted scanning is essentially a board that looks like this. And this is often for people who don't have a way to point, and the partner simply goes through the rows of the board. Is the letter you want in row A, E, I, and then if the person gives their yes signal, then they'll go across that row. I, J, K, and when they say the letter they want, the communicator will look up or do whatever their yes signal is to let them know that's the letter. So it can be kind of a slow communication method, but it is communication, and it's novel messages, not just a picture of a toilet and a picture of a, pain, someone with holding their arm, this is, someone can generate novel messages. So that's a valid communication method for someone who has no movement at all. So that, again, people who are using that partner-assisted method with the AEIOU layout, I like to keep things consistent between your low-tech and your high-tech. So this is often the board they'll use, even if they're not using scanning with this board. But it's a good scanning board too. So there's such a thing as Hightech Scanning, which is the device actually scans the board for you. So let's take a look. So I'm not going to turn scanning on right now, but scanning first highlights the first row. It turns gets outlined or turns into different color next row, and you can push a switch or any sensitive button that you can activate to choose the row and then the column. Okay, let's take a look at a couple more keyboards. Again, on the second page. All right, frequency scanning. We just talked a little bit about scanning, so you understand the concept of that. This is a page that really I would only use for someone who is using scanning. So someone who maybe wasn't able to use eye tracking any longer. Sometimes people with ALS end up with a ocular apraxia over a number of years that makes it really hard to target. Often in that case, we go to bigger and bigger buttons, but if we get to the point where maybe there's a lot of eye droop or something where we can't use eye tracking, it's important to have the scanning option. And for people with other conditions, this can be a really great access option too. So let me just explain this board because it is unique. So what this board is it's really designed for a literate user who will be using word prediction. So let me explain what I mean. The buttons that a scanner gets to the most quickly are the ones up in this, I kind of call it the golden triangle of the board. When they're scanning, it goes row, 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 row. So obviously they get to the top before they get to the bottom, and then it goes column, 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 column. And so they'll get to this side before they get to that side. So this triangle has the letters they'll get to the first. And this is a frequency keyboard, but it's based on some research by a person named Peter Norvig, who determined that if you're using word prediction, the letters that you want to have in your frequency keyboard are really the first 3 letters that appear the most in words, or the letters that appear the most frequently in the first 3 positions of words. When you're using word prediction, he realized you only need to go past the 3rd letter of a word about 17% of the time. That's not very much. Your word appears in word prediction after the second, sometimes the first, second, or 3rd letter 83% of the time. So we want to put the letters that start words up here. For example, a Y is a common letter, and in a typical frequency keyboard, a Y might be up in the golden triangle because that's a really common letter, but it's a common letter that ends words, and it's not going to bring up the word prediction that you need. So this is a very specific keyboard designed based on research. Let's go back. Let me find settings here. Change keyboards. So that's a frequency scanning. Very useful with people who are using word prediction. If someone wasn't relying on word prediction, sometimes people with ALS can have some cognitive changes, and one of the cognitive changes can be the inability to kind of shift strategies. And so I've worked with people who really stay in a keyboard, and also this would look like major disorganization to them. So a keyboard like this for scanning would work better for them. Excellent. Okay, let's look at another keyboard. Now these 2 bottom keyboards are really for eye trackers only. People who have trouble targeting, maybe someone who had cerebral palsy and using a touch screen too might benefit from something like this. But with ALS, typically eye trackers who are having some problem targeting accurately, and I'll try these keyboards out for them. And this one again is based on that Norvig research. So what you find here is that the most common letters that start words are on the first page. You've got your word prediction here. I want big buttons here, so we did do phrase prediction or chat history on, we shared a row for that. We have the toggle. And what you see with this keyboard is we split the keyboard. There's a second page with the other letters of the keyboard that occur more frequently at the end of words. So let's just see how this works. Let's type a sentence out just so you can kind of see how you'd use this. Let's see, I need some help. I need, S is on this page, some help, H is on this page. Oh, okay. So that was, so the goal is to not have to leave the first page, and that was just a great example of that. But if you had a word starting with M, with like, let's say we're going to say my BiPAP, you'd go to this page and select M and get my, and it would, so you can see that this is a very efficient way. If someone has to use a split keyboard, it's an efficient way to do it. And let's look at the final page. Oh, here's an example. So settings isn't on this page because I really want to make buttons big. So I had to, one of the ways I conserved the space was to not put the settings button on, but there's always a way to get to the settings button. With this one, you just have to go back to your topics page. Okay. Let's take a look. The final keyboard is, again, a keyboard designed for people who are really struggling with targeting. And this is a 2-hit keyboard. Let's take a look at how you would use this keyboard. We could do the same sentence we just did. I need help. So we've got it here, I, and then you see the groups of letters, and so you select it, and then the N is there. You can see E is in this group. I need, but fortunately we've got word prediction, so I need help. And once we select the H, we get help. So again, a little slower because it's a 2-hit keyboard, but boy, that can really speed people up if they're not accurate on the QWERTY keyboard anymore. So a lot of times with my clients, I need to actually get a timer out and show them. I tell them, no, fix all your errors. So if you make mistakes, if you're hitting the wrong keys, go back and fix it. And I'm going to time you saying one sentence over and over again. And let's see how many words per minute you can produce with your QWERTY keyboard that you've become familiar with. And now, or this keyboard that I'm thinking might be a little faster for you. And they end up realizing much of the time that this is faster. If you're correcting your errors, they're faster when they're more accurate. So sometimes it does take a little selling to get someone to be willing to look at this keyboard, but they can really end up speeding up. Okay, so let's now look at, oh, one thing before we go. This keyboard is designed for people who really are struggling to target. And so we don't have them going back to the standard phrase topics page. Instead, we have we kind of created their own little microclimate with big buttons. So everything is big button within that for someone using this keyboard. But they still have access to a lot of the nice features. They've got chat history. So they can go back to sentences they've said before. And they also, let's see, have they also have on the this page with the A, B, C, D chat history. So they could do that same trick that we looked at earlier. Let's clear this, and I'm going to type in the word leg. And go in here, put a space, and oh, select chat history, and oh, here we go. And their whole sentence. So by using a keyword, they were able to get their sentence up and not have to type all this out. And let me show you one more strategy that I really like, especially for people using a slower, maybe scanning, or they're a little slower with their production of their messages. Let's go back. And that is using abbreviation expansion. Let me clear this, and I'll show you how to do it in AlphaCore. Oops, clear. Okay, So abbreviation expansion is something people have to plan a little bit. So let's say I frequently ask for tissues. I need a tissue, or I need my BiPAP. With abbreviation expansion, and I'll show you where you do it later, you go in and you make a little code, N for need and T for tissue. And then you've set it so that I need a tissue, please comes up. So that can be really very helpful. Then we could speak it to. Okay, let me show you how you do that. And this is going to be, this webinar is going to be saved, so you can go back and check and review. I'm going to go kind of quickly through some of this. This is advanced, so you know, don't worry if you don't catch it this time through. But the way you do it is you go into the settings up here. Let me show you that again, the little 3 lines. And this is how you'd program some word abbreviation expansions. And you go into settings. And then you go into writing. And there's something here called abbreviation. And if you select that, come on. Huh, okay. I don't know why it's not opening. I may just have too much going on with the webinar too. But when you open up this location under writing, called abbreviation expansion, you can put in the codes and what you want them to expand to, the phrases you want them to expand to. So that's a great thing to just know about. Okay, so let's see, what do we want to do next? Okay, well, let's take a tour of the topic pages now. Go to settings. I think I'll change my keyboard to this. Okay, so let's look at the topics pages and how that's organized. So this is sort of a main page in the page set, and on the top in light blue are all the phrase pages. And I put these in just to give people some organization, to get people started with some of the most common phrase pages that the folks I work with really like using. So you can explore these. I'll show you a few of them today. And then at the bottom, there are the dark blue buttons are kind of more the functions of AlphaCore. Grid Explorer is where you can go to, let's just give it a click. Do you want to exit AlphaCore? Sure. You can go to get to some of the really wonderful page sets that Grid provides too. In addition to AlphaCore, there's one for using Kindle to read, there's a WhatsApp, and these are all things that you can get to by just going into the Explorer. Let's go back into AlphaCore and back to the topics page. And so let's see what else. Web browser. The web browser is kind of a contained way to navigate the web, especially good for eye trackers. But the other method that I like a lot, because it's a little less restrictive, but again, it doesn't assist as much. Web browser provides nice big targets, but computer controls is an alternative to using the web browser, and that lets you kind of navigate more freeform. So those are two to look at. There's a photo and camera location where you can take pictures. We're going to talk about message banking. We'll talk about more of these in a second. Back on the bottom, the dark blue are just kind of some of your main navigation pages and settings and that kind of thing. So let's take a look at one of the pages and see how the phrase pages are organized in AlphaCore. So let me go to scheduling. I do so much I've always customized a lot of scheduling pages for my patients because they do so much of it. So I like using those a lot. So let's just look at this page. This is a phrase page in AlphaCore, and the light blue at the top are actually word list buttons. And the reason that I'm using those is because they're fast and easy to modify. With word list, if you've got more than the number of blue buttons there, it will go on to kind of another page. All right, so let's create a sentence, but let me introduce some of the other buttons on here too. The white buttons are not so easy to add and remove as the blue buttons are in AlphaCore, because they're functional buttons that I think are really useful to have on that page. So we'll take a look at how that works. And then at the bottom, anytime you see a button on AlphaCore that has these parentheses around it, it takes you to another page. So it navigates you automatically to another page, so you don't need to do the navigation. And I think the best way to show you what I'm talking about is just, let's make a sentence. How about, can you drive me to the doctor's office on Monday, July 3rd? Or, okay, can you drive me? We start with a leader phrase up here.
Can you drive me?
And then we would go to, and then places. The doctor's office is in places. And we might want to say the doctors.
The doctors.
Okay, and then we can go back. And then what if we wanted to say, like we wanted to say on Monday, the 3rd, July 3rd, on
Monday. July. Third. Can you drive me to the doctor's on Monday, July 3rd?
Okay, so let's go back. So that's the basic organization of phrase pages that you'll find in AlphaCore. Now let's look at editing. It is very easy. Let's just go to another topic page for that. Let's go to goodbyes. Okay, let's clear what we've got in the window. So if you want to add something that you always say when you say goodbye to your family, all you would do would be to add it to the message window here. Let's see, when will I see you again? I don't think I might not have that one. When will I see you again? And then we would just push add message and it appears in here. Okay, if you want to delete a message, you just delete. So, and this brings up something called trimming that it's one of the first assignments I give my clients after we start working on this page set. And that is, yeah, I did put some content in here based on common messages that my clients have shown me over the years that they wanted, but some of these aren't going to be appropriate for you. Like, let's say you are someone who would say, I'm afraid, or you would never say, I'm afraid I've run out of steam. That's just not your style. So what we'd want to do is, I call it trimming. I just ask my clients to go through pages that they think would be useful to them, and first of all, before they even start adding anything, clear out the messages that they would never use. So they would just kind of go through, and also this familiarizes them with the messages that are in there, so they'd listen.
Well, I better be going. Looks like it's time to go.
You know, those are always very useful. I find those kinds of messages, but this one the person doesn't want. So you just hit remove and get rid of it. And so again, this is something that I think it's really important. If you're going to use phrase pages and use them effectively, you have to get rid of the junk on the page, the stuff that's not your style, that you wouldn't say. Let's say you might say, you know, I'm really exhausted instead of I've run out of steam. You could just type that up in the message window now, I'm really exhausted, and add it in the way you'd say it. So cleaning it up is super important. Otherwise, frankly, if people have to search through a bunch of messages they never use, they won't use that page. It won't be useful. So that is just a really important strategy, is to clear out phrases. Now I want to talk about message banking a little. Message banking is recording phrases that that you would say frequently or that are important to have in your own voice. And a lot of people do this before they have speech changes with ALS. And if they don't happen to get to it before they have speech changes, a lot of people have never heard of it until their speech is already very hard to understand, then a lot of times they'll have a friend or a sibling record messages, someone with maybe a similar voice. That would be great. If you have already done message banking, I've incorporated a page in AlphaCore for that works really beautifully with the mymessagebanking.com website. The mymessagebanking.com website, in a nutshell, labels all your messages. So you've recorded your WAV files. That's important that you record in the WAV file format, and you've done it maybe on your iPhone or on a Zoom recorder. And then you just can pour them into this website created by a colleague of mine, John Costello, who, along with Toby Dynavox. And that website is really wonderful. So it just listens to all your messages, writes the label down, and then you can go through and make sure they're written correctly, and you can tag them, each one with a topic. So let's say your message was, I've really run out of steam. You could tag that with goodbye. And then you have another message that might say, oh, it's so good to see you. And you could tag that with greetings. And if you have another message, please move my left leg, you could tag that with repositioning. Those tags, when you pour these messages in, those tags will show up on your top level. So you'd have greetings, goodbyes, and these would be all recorded messages. And when you selected greetings, it would play the recorded messages, all of your greetings. They would be written over here, and you could play them. So that's how that works. You can also record on the fly in AlphaCore. I tried to make that easy. So if you want to do a recording in AlphaCore, basically what you do is you go, I usually tell people, go to a page that has something on it that you want. You know, you could do nice to meet you. And then you would just go, and it's in the expander. You could hit record. And then you just record yourself saying that message. Let's see. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
I've got my recording. And when I go back to that page, let's see here. And I'm going to clear the recording, clear the message out.
Nice to meet you.
Now it's a recording, and that might be a sibling or someone else, or could be your own recordings. So that's a nice feature too. A place that people especially like to do recordings is for sounds. So sounds are important. Let me show you what that page is. Sounds. Okay, these are things like laughter and you know, just things. Often these are great for humor too. Like if somebody is saying something that, or you can't get someone's attention, you might go so you could have recorded that ahead of time, or have, like I said, a family member do it for you. Now you may notice on this page there are little hyphens in front of all of these words, and let me explain to you why. And this is an important strategy if you're going to be message banking, important to know. That is, if you record kiss, let me do it. Let's do it. So I'm going to select that message, right? That says kiss. And now I'm going to record it. Mwah. Okay, back. Okay, now I can either type that message with a hyphen, kiss, and when I play it, it'll be my recording. Now, if I didn't put that hyphen in front of it, and it was just the word kiss, anytime I use the word kiss in a sentence, it would play my recording, and that isn't going to work out well. So you want to, if it's a sound, you do want to put the hyphen. Another time I recommend putting a hyphen is hyphen in is for single words that you're recording, like, let's say you do a real exaggerated what. You can play that recording, put a hyphen in front of it, and when you want your exaggerated what, you use the hyphen WHAT, and you'll get that recording. If you don't, then when you say sentences like, what was she doing, it will sound like, what was she doing? And you don't want that typically. So hopefully you understand. We'll have questions at the end if that doesn't make sense. But this is just a really good method. A couple other things that are on this page that I want to draw your attention to. That attention chime is on this page too. We talked about for getting people's attention before you start talking, especially in a group, or if maybe a caregiver's busy doing something in your room, they're not focused on you at the moment, you get their attention first. And then I also have an alarm that's louder, a little more obnoxious, and that's for getting someone's attention maybe in another room. It's a real call chime, like you need something. And it will go until you turn it off. Okay. All right. Let's take a look at communication tips. Again, this is something that I've really been helped with over the years by the clients and caregivers that I work with, and they've filled me in on some of the things that would be helpful. So, you know, these are powerful communication tools. These allow you to kind of control communication with other people. For example, let's see, hold on. Let's say you've typed a message out, please pick up the laundry on your way home from, and you're starting to type the word work, and someone's starting to walk out the door because they don't know that you've got something more that you want to add. So you could play this message.
Hold on.
And you notice hold on doesn't go into the message window because we don't want to interrupt the message that you've been typing. These are just little quick pieces of advice. Anytime you see a message in AlphaCore that's shaped like this, like these little message bubbles, they don't actually write themselves into the message window because you don't want to have, could you please pick up the laundry, hold on, and then you can finish what you're saying, finish typing that out. So, you know, just some general information for people that they may not know. For example, my hearing and thinking are fine, so you can speak normally to me. Should I repeat that? Let's say you're looking at someone and you can kind of tell they're being polite, but they didn't understand. So you could ask them that. Another thing that I find really important is I know when I walk into a room, let's say I'm walking into a hospital room with someone who has ALS and they're very paralyzed, they're not able to move. The first thing I always ask them is, show me what your yes looks like. Show me how you say yes. And a lot of times they'll glance up or they might do a slight nod. And then I'll say, show me how you say no. And once I have that, we can start communicating. But until I have that, we can't. But a lot of people don't know this. This is a strategy, you know, I've figured out. I built it in. Because what I've seen happen was, you know, a nurse will come in the room and maybe say, hey, when you want to tell me yes to something, squeeze my hand. Well, the person can't squeeze their hand. And so they don't know, so the directive is coming from the nurse instead of the patient. So what I added in was,
When I am saying yes, I will do this. Watch me.
so you can tell the people, when I want to say yes, this is what it looks like. Take a look. And
when I want to say no, I do this. Watch me.
Okay, so 2, I find this page to be really helpful. Definitely, I go over it with clients in one of our first therapy sessions so that they can kind of see what's in here and again, clear it up. If there's things on here they'd never say, then they can delete them. Okay, what's another one? Let's look at questions and continuers. Okay, these also they're known in speech therapy talk as non-obligatory phrases. These are things that I always tell people, go to this page that, let's go back so we can see what it's called, questions and continuers. go to that page when someone else is talking and you want to let them know you're really following along. A lot of times people with ALS can end up with kind of a flat affect, meaning they can't, you know, the muscles for smiling or laughter, some of those muscles are not working. And it's important to let people know you're listening when they're telling a story and kind of encourage them to keep going. So, you know, you could, you know, just kind of.
Really? Right. Right.
These are all things we do by nodding, and we say a lot of these things while someone else is talking.
Good.
And then let's say you want to change the topic and start talking about something related, but you've got to get your foot in the door. So,
Okay, this is what I think. I'll tell you about it.
okay, so, you know, this page again is a good one to practice. It's got some quick WH words, which are great. You know, what? When?
Again?
You know, asking questions while someone else is talking. So again, this page is a great little page to use if someone else is kind of telling a story or something. Okay, let me just quickly show, this is a button that's on all the pages. Yes, no, please, thanks. Like I said earlier, a lot of people, even with very minimal ability to move, have a way to say yes, no. But if you're on the phone, that might not work. Or maybe you don't have a way, or someone's hasn't asked you how you say yes and no. So it's important to have this, but I kind of tucked it away a little bit. But it is available on every page. So yes, no, it's always important to have a maybe. Please, you're welcome, thanks, yes, and thanks, you know, just some words that people use, little kind of quick fires that people say a lot. And then a couple of modifiers over here. Often so much of what the communication needs to be is like telling people after you've requested something, you know, maybe a bit more.
A bit more. A bit more. That's perfect. Stop. That's too much.
So just those little quickies to be able to say. And then also I've had a lot of people over the years tell me that they always feel like they're ordering around their caregiver, and they want a way to kind of soften things. So let's say you're on your needs page, okay, and
Suctioning, please.
and then you can just quickly go here and then say,
When you have time.
or you might want to say,
Right away.
okay, so just some little modifiers there. Let's look at another page. Let's see, diet and eating strategies. This is a great page for speech therapists to go over with their patients who are using this communication page set. So I created this page very recently. This is probably the newest one I created because I went into one of my clients' hospital rooms and I pushed his chat history. I was kind of programming something for him and I hit his chat history and I realized almost all the messages in this guy's chat history were all about how to feed him properly. And that had never really occurred to me, you know, because he wanted, you know, he needed to tell people,
To eat slowly to be safe.
and maybe they were pushing him a little bit, or he needed to tell them,
Please sit before you are prior to eat or drink.
okay, so I realized this is a great thing to have in here, and a speech therapist could, during a therapy session, actually sit down and kind of go through these, you know, and say some of them, oh, let's delete that, like, can I have a straw, please? That will work well for some people, but for some people, they can't kind of purse their lips enough to grip a straw, and the speech therapist will say, well, that's not going to work for you. Let's remove that one, but this one is really good for you. My mouth needs to be cleaned before I eat to prevent pneumonia, something like that. So this is a page worth exploring, and there's also, again, these are the buttons that I was talking about earlier that take you to another page. So for example, you might want to inform someone what your current diet is.
Current diet is regular. This means I can eat all types of foods.
Or back. Let's say they're feeding you something that's really hard for you to eat.
I can't eat that as a soup. Crumbly, dry, and bland.
There you go. Crumbly, dry, and bland. That's a vicious combination. Okay, so let's look at the phone page. This has a couple things on it that I wanted to show you. And again, clear. This is just a page to help on the phone, which is a very challenging communication modality for people who are using speech generating devices, but it can be done. And this page can help out with that. So a couple things on here. This is a great thing to message bank. Don't hang up. I use a speech generating device. You know, just information for people in your voice. Often if people hear synthesized speech, when you get on, they answer the phone, they'll hang up. So there was actually a study that showed that there were a lot of hang-ups, like 36% of people making calls with a speech generating device using synthesized speech got a hang up. But these can be especially helpful with family members, you know. So let's take a look. Here's something that is really helpful. It's a phonetic alphabet. So let's say you are telling someone, my last name is, you know, Roman, and they're just not getting it. Then you can go through and type it out.
R as in Romeo.
R as in Romeo. I'm not sure if you can hear that, but
O as in Oscar. M as in Mike. A as in Alpha. N as in November.
and then you can say the whole thing.
Roman.
There. Okay.
Please repeat that back to me, so I am sure you got it.
Or you could tell them.
No, let's try it again.
So there's, you know, that's just a nice page too that might be useful. And there's a lot of useful pages in AlphaCore. So I just wanted to show you a few, but please explore. Now I wanted to show you one more thing. In terms of the camera, this is a picture's worth 1,000 words. There is a camera here, which can be fun. So if you select the camera, you should have an image of you know, your front-facing camera, and you can take a picture. So that's fun. You can tell people.
Let's get a picture of this. Can you all gather together? Just get in front of my computer.
Okay, and you can change what these light blue messages are by adding and subtracting them here. Let's see. And but what I wanted to show you was this is fun, but pictures can be really powerful too. This button has all the pictures that you store on your speech generating device or your computer. So let me go to this page, personal care. So a lot of times our clients, you know, they're so used to, we're all so used to doing things for ourselves. We brushed our hair, we did our makeup ourselves, we organized our desk ourselves, and now suddenly we're needing to ask other people to help us with that. But one of the best ways to do that is to actually show people a picture of how you like things done.
Here's a picture that shows how I like it.
Okay, let's say you've just asked someone to do your makeup, and then you can go into a photo browser, and I've got directions here, and just show them a picture. That's how I like my makeup applied, or that's how you should slide on the tray so that my trackball and switch are right where I need them. Here's where I need a switch so I can activate my call chime, but it has to be right here for me to hit it, you know, but you can show them. Position my remote control in my hand. Don't leave it outside my hand. When you leave the room, I can't use it. You know, these are all things that a picture can be really helpful with. So I wanted to kind of leave you with that, and I'm sure some people have some questions, and I'm excited to hear those. And let's end with that.
Thank you so much for that webinar. That was so interesting and covered just so many different features, and really, yeah, it was great hearing about all of the thought that went into the design of AlphaCore. That's great. And Amy, we've got time for a question. We've had some good discussion going on in the chat. So the first question that we had was from Chris, who said, in your experience, how long does it take a person with ALS to get proficiency with the core board?
Oh, yeah. Well, I find it's pretty fast, actually, because once they get the concept of what kinds of words are on the core board, and the words on a core vocabulary board are going to be the words that we use over and over again in sentences, so not nouns. They're going to be, prepositions and verbs, the most common words. So once I do a little talk with people about the types of words they'd see. So they're not going to see people, places, and things, but on the core board itself, there's a place for their unique people, places, and things, because that's different for everyone. The other words are the same in every sentence, but the core words, they call it fringe vocabulary. For people, nouns are always going to be fringe. You have a cousin named Joe, but no one, a lot of other people don't. So we can't put Joe in there. So anyway, I find that it takes about one session. I've had plenty of people who are zooming around by the end of one session. For other people, I've given them a little list of sentences to practice, and they've told me like halfway through the practice, they had it. So it doesn't take long. It just, the first time someone's introduced to it, they might feel a little awkward in it. So I tell them, hey, let's keep practicing. Do the same sentence over and over again and see how fast you get. And then, okay, now we're going to expand out. So again, this is a board that can take a little selling, and you have to kind of help people get through maybe an initial resistance, because there's a lot on the board, and just show them how fast they can get with it.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Amy. That kind of ties in with another question that I had just the other week when I was demonstrating AlphaCore. Someone was saying, like, is there anything that you do when you're introducing someone to the different keyboards? So perhaps those keyboards layouts that are slightly less familiar, is there anything that you might do with someone to get them to try it out and really see the benefit of that keyboard? So maybe the switch frequency keyboard, for example. That makes sense, Amy.
Yes, yeah, and one thing I use a lot, and I mentioned it briefly in just a little while ago, but it is that I will take a stopwatch and I'll set it in my iPhone to 1 minute, and I'll give the person a sentence. Let's go to the store tomorrow, and I'll have them type the same sentence over and over again in one keyboard that looks familiar and easy for them to use. And when the stopwatch goes off, I see how many words per minute. I can count because it's on the message window. It's not such a hard task to do with someone. And then I have them go to a keyboard that I think they might even be faster on, but it's going to take a little convincing. And so I want to show them the data. So I might have them practice a little on that keyboard first because it's unfamiliar. But then once they've practiced a little, I'll set that minute again. I always tell them, correct all your errors. And then I'll see how many words per minute, and the proof is in the pudding. If they're much faster on a less familiar keyboard, once they see that they're faster, it doesn't take much convincing. That it's just data. So I like doing that, and they can still use their familiar keyboard when they want to maybe play around with the one they saw they were a little faster on. But most people immediately want to use the one they're faster on. It's all about speed with communication.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Amy. That was really useful. And I think there's actually more information on that in the manual. You give quite a nice description of an activity, just like that one you were describing. So that's great. Thanks, Amy. And I think that's all the time we've got with questions. But after this webinar finishes, we'll be sharing a link to this in the Facebook community, which you can get to easily just on Facebook if you just search for Smartbox, or if you go to thinksmartbox.com/Facebook, that will take you straight into that Facebook group, and you can ask any other questions that you think of just in the comments below, and Amy will actually be around. She'll be able to answer some of those questions too if you do think of anything after this webinar has finished. So I'd just like to say thank you again, Amy, for that webinar. It was absolutely fantastic to hear such detail about AlphaCore, and I hope everyone else found that really helpful too. So thank you very much.
Thank you, and thank you everyone for joining today.